I'm coming to Palm Beach Boat Show next year, all the way from Australia. Is it a good boat show? This clip is brought to you by PartsView.com. Save money on all your boat or engine parts when you use the link and discount codes in the description below. So as far as the boat show, the West Palm Boat Show is a good boat show. It definitely ain't Flibs or Fort Lauderdale. It's definitely not Miami International. So if you could go to Fort Lauderdale or Miami, those are massive shows. Obviously, yeah, you probably don't have that big of a boat show, scene in Australia, as you do here. West Palm is a good show. So yeah, it's a good show, but it's not nearly as big as the other two. So, there is that. But as far as the speed goes, 100% bottom paint, you could probably see a loss of 2 miles an hour, maybe 3, somewhere in that region there. And then a Bimini top, a Bimini top for sure, that thing's like a parachute on top of the boat, just catching wind. And like we were just saying with the speed and the cruising speed, the wind is a major factor. It's just like, think about your car. When you're running down the highway at a certain speed, you're going to have a certain fuel burn. As soon as you brake, say 75, 80, 85, the fuel consumption goes just tanks. And that's because the wind, the wind is the major factor. And so once you break that speed, now all of a sudden you're fighting that much more wind. And especially if you get into a windy situation. Same thing on the water. The wind, the boat's going through, the bottom paint is basically like sticking it to the water, and it's rough. It's not slick. So if you take a boat that is polished gel coat with a hydrophobic something on it, being a wax or a ceramic or whatever, that coating on it where water doesn't stick to that, there's less drag, less friction. Bottom paint is very abrasive. It's not really abrasive, but there's a lot of texture there, so you're going to lose a couple mile an hour. The Bimini, just think of it as a parachute on the top of the boat. So as you're going along, that parachute is just grabbing wind and pulling the boat backwards. So yeah, 6 miles an hour with bottom paint and in a Bimini, for sure you could lose that much. You could easily lose that much, which is kind of why Bimini tops, you want to be able to remove them from the boat, or you want to be able to put them down. So as long as you can kind of put them down or remove them, depending on how big it is, some boats like this Boston Whaler we just did, we put a 4-bow on that one. So that kind of Bimini is a little bit harder to take off. But yeah, they consume a lot of speed. Brandon Powerstroke says, I was thinking about repowering my current boat, but now I'm leaning more towards buying a bigger boat. Several of the boats I'm interested in have Yamaha 350s. Is there any way to tell true hours in the 2010 to 2015 year range? Most of them are low hours, but that may be because of the recall ECU replacement. Is it best to just stay away from the 350s and get something with 300s instead? So I want to say that the ECUs were only changed on the Generation A models, which was like 07 to 11, something like that. Don't quote me on the years. I'm pulling off the top of my head. But like the Generation B being the 11 to the 15 or 16, whatever it was, and then the C's 16 or 15 above, even better. So I want to say the ECU replacements were only on Gen A. So if you're looking at a 2012 Gen B F350, that thing probably didn't get an ECU replacement. It probably, it's going to be original. If you get a Generation A, yeah, depending on when the ECU is replaced, there ain't no way of going back for that. Depending on the tack situation. So depending on what the gauges are on the setup, some of the gauges, like just a regular old 65 or whatever, the gauges store hours. So the hours on the gauge are what the boat has. It's not the engine ECU. The download that you pull from the engine is going to give you whatever's on the ECU, but what's on the gauge is going to be what's on the gauge. So if the boat has the gauge, that'll be your true hours, because those don't get replaced. As far as staying away from the 350s and going to the 300s, Gen B and Gen C 350s, I think they're a good engine. They're reliable. You still got the flywheel problem. It's still a harmonic balancing issue. Probably the timing, the firing order, unsure exactly what the true issue is there with the flywheels, but They're not a terrible engine. I don't think they're unreliable. The flywheel issue is just what it is. That's that cruising speed. Back to cruising range being the 350 is 3,700 to 4,200. So for a lot of boats, especially a boat running 350s, is probably the cruising speed is somewhere in that maybe 4,000, 4,100. So more than likely your cruising speed is going to be 43 to 45 just to stay out of that range, because at that range, that's what makes them come apart. The 300 though, the 4.2 liter Yamaha 300, I mean, stupid reliability right there. So you ain't going to go wrong with any 4.2 300, 100% on the 300. You ain't going to go wrong there. So hope that helps in your decision-making process. Now, if you like this video, you can watch the full episode over here, or you can watch another clip over here.